Having recovered from the effects of the long shuttlecock journey, Jim Quirk and his crew left the temporary shelter of the cave and began to build a wooden home. It was to be the first natural home that many had known since childhood, for there was no telling how long they would live here. The planet was a paradise. It contained mango-like fruit, the creatures in the lake proved edible, and the climate was quite mild. Spook, any more theories about the death wave? And by the way, thanks for your intuition. Captain, the Klingons must have found a way to manipulate the local superstring so as to fold the usual 4 dimensions into dimensions 8, 11, thereby effectively removing any object from spacetime, collapsing it into effective oblivion. Perhaps antimatter can keep the superstring from twisting by anti-twisting it back the other way. Spook, tell me something I can understand. I need answers. It is a simple matter to figure out, I believe, Captain. This is why the Klingons were moving so quickly against us and why they were careful to leave no trace of survivors or jettisoned recording devices. For it is the pseudo-anti-quarks that cause the massive destruction when they react with our positive elements of matter. And it's the encasing graviton wave that keeps the anti-quarks together and also provides the attraction of the death wave to its prey. We need only tie in the antimatter waves in the WEF drives to the shells. This will repel the graviton shell of the death wave, and may in fact even reflect the death wave back to its source. Something indeed like your carbonite. May, asks Quirk of Spook, or will reflect the death wave back to its source. Captain, my computer resources are now limited to those aboard the shuttlecock. I am projecting answers based on results from the meager facilities that are available to me, on the premise that any defense whatsoever is better than none at all. In other words, you are guessing, Spook. I never guess, Captain. I interpret all available input and analyze it and then project the most likely resultant effect. But your intuition? Okay, never mind. Will Scuddy and the Federated know what to do? Yes, they will, Captain. I am 97.52% certain.
Captain, inquired Uhura, shall I activate the emergency locator beacon on the shuttlecock? Not yet. I need some time to think. Spook, asked the captain in his pleading tone. I have 2 questions which need answering. I can answer neither of them at this time, Captain. You haven't even heard the questions yet. Captain, you were about to ask, as you would say it, I need to know what in the hell's going on out there. And where are we? Spook, you've read my mind. Now how about those answers? Captain, I must remind you that the shuttlecock scanner range is limited to approximately the width and breadth of a solar system. Therefore, there is no way to know what in the hell's going on out there at this time. However, if you come back tonight after dark, I may have some answers as to where we are. Quirk impatiently waited the 6 hours until nightfall arrived, dismayed all the while to see that Spook was spending the time sleeping rather than tinkering with the shuttlecock scanners or something like that. Meanwhile, the last wisps of twilight had faded when this world turned away from the binary stars which gave it light in this forsaken section of the cosmos. Spook arrived precisely at dark and directed Quirk away from the camp's lights and towards a meadow. Quirk and Spook stood silently for a few minutes, watching the last of the planet's 2 moons sink below the horizon, for one of the moons was horned, and as it sank on its side, only the tips of its 2 horns could be seen as 2 distinct points of light, a rare sight. Spook, I haven't seen a moonset in a long time, nor have I recently felt the feel of the good earth beneath my feet. Perhaps it is time for me to retire. I could settle down with Miss Rind. We could build a cabin. We could live well, but without too much high tech. Like you did as a boy back in Idaho, continued Spook. Yes, kind of like that. Like the new pioneers, said Spook, who have ridden their wagon train to the stars to settle down and farm the fertile land. Spook, you've been studying American history. As first overseer, it is my duty to know my captain and his history. We've seen a lot together on 4 10-year missions, haven't we, Spook? Indeed we have. Yet there is much that you have seldom seen, such as moonsets, for moons do not set in space, and you hardly ever take shore leave to the open air on planets, although you've often visited those quaint indoor bars where the dancing girls were green. Again, you are correct, Spook. For I knew that once I set foot on some beautiful planet, it would be difficult for me to return to ships and space stations and their artificial gravity. Now, Spook, back to reality. What can you tell me about where we are and what's happening out there? Where are your instruments? You don't even have your bicorder with you. You look naked, Spook. Have you gone back to nature already?
Captain, this is reality. I did not bring any instruments since they would be of no use here, and I assure you that I am not naked. As for my going back to nature, I take that to mean that I shall use my natural scanning instruments to answer your questions. You mean your senses, Spook, your eyes? Yes, Captain, look up into the night sky. What do you see? I see the constellation of the Scorpion. It's barely recognizable and twisted out of shape. I see that Gemini no longer consists of twins. Leo has no feet. The teapot has no spout. Pegasus is now facing us almost head-on because, of course, we're viewing the constellations from a different angle, one that we've never become used to. I don't really recognize anything. What's that strange black circular shadow, Spook? Captain, my calculations lead me to believe that we are seeing the back of the Horsehead Nebula. My God, Spook! We're still quite deep into Klingon space. Yes, and so we had better not use the emergency locator signal. True, Clank would know it was us. We must remain safely dead for now. We will be safe here, Jim. Obviously the Klingons have no use for this planet. Look, Spook, over there near Orion's hunting dog. A supernova? They both stared at the flash of light in the dark sky. It was an explosion which seemed to be expanding at a high rate of speed. Spook, look at the speed of that thing. Orion is not far from here. The speed is approximately Weft 14, Captain, but it is not an explosion. It is travelling as a unit, although it is expanding. A rather strange event then took place. The travelling phenomena of light seemed to slow down and halt for a second, and then reversed its direction, picking up speed. It soon exploded and turned night into day for a few seconds, and then was seen no more.
Spook and Quirk looked at each other when their eyesight returned. Each now realized what they had witnessed in the night sky without the benefit of high-tech instruments. Spook, Starfleet has countered the death wave, reflected it, and the Klingons themselves seem to have no defense against their own weapon. Indeed, Captain, these days military secrets are still the most fleeting of all. Advances in the sciences have increased exponentially to the point that we can now do in weeks what once took Einstein a lifetime. The Klingons will not dare to use the death wave again. The war will continue now with more conventional weapons. The war will continue, Spook. Yes, Captain. As First Overseer, it's also my duty to know the Klingon mind. They never back down once a war begins. They never have done so in all their history. The Organian peace treaty stopped them for a while when we were both powerless against the Organian force fields. But now, of course, those fields have been eliminated since the Organians have adopted a non-interference type prime directive of their own. That's got to be Scutty out there, Spook. All of his scanners will now be on in total multi-directional short and long-range mode. Captain, even if we could risk the use of our emergency beacon, it just doesn't have the range. The Federated ship is too far away. Just then, Uhura came on Jim's commophone. Captain, I am picking up a Starfleet directive being issued galaxy-wide to all starboats. It says, the test was successful. Activate recommended in-space shield and WEF drive modifications. Also, it says a state of war has been declared by Starfleet, and the Romantans have joined the Klingons against us in the war. Well, Spook, so much for life here in paradise. We've got to get off of this planet and help. They hurried back to camp.